about Western philosophy, and we've chosen 10 top philosophers. Last time we were talking about Socrates, and we talked about Socrates as having his maybe his very important statement that was, "I know, therefore I know nothing." That was his statement, and he was in Athens, and mind you, was sentenced to death just because thinking that he was the one to provoke, youth to think and to ask questions. So he had become a martyr to the love of knowledge. Okay, and we said that he was the legendary father of Western philosophy. Okay. Now we'll continue talking about Confucius. Confucius, very, very important philosopher. Some people call him Conchu. Okay, so more than one name. It depends on those speaking English or the native speakers. His main effort was in searching for anything to solve problems in chaos places, chaos life and world, and searching for peace. Okay, so that was his main search for. And he believed in the restoration of traditional Chinese life and nature. So his idea of restoration, to restore, to reinvent, to recreate in another way. And he was concerned about ethical societies, how to establish ethical societies. So the main order here of Confucius was moral and ethical. Okay. So now what are his main disciplines? It's loving others, peace, discipline, respecting discipline, and even self-constraint or discipline and order. They call him an early professor of what is called golden rule. Okay, golden rules. Okay. Now, at that time, nobody listened to him. But after, as all philosophers do, after his death, after he passed away, we have what is called Confucianism nowadays. So, and they respect the disciplines, the golden and disciplines of Confucius. Now, he concentrated on what we call cultural practices. And that is practices that are so concentrating on ethical and moral dimensions, values, and how people should behave. Now, before we continue here, let's see what other things we have about Confucius and study his life maybe and talk about him. This is one of the photos talking about the teachings of Confucius as a portrait. And those who know the language Chinese can read better. So it's his name means Master Kong. It's like a master Chinese philosopher who he was considered as a politician also. And he has many writings and traditional writings. One of them is about spring and autumn period. They Chinese and also Japanese tradition. They believe in autumn and spring as the major two, like forces in nature. So he tried to reflect that on tradition and life, and he tried to consider everything in Chinese sages, which is kind of spiritual, let's say, wisdom in a way. And he talked about, Confucianism. This is the word, Confucianism, as you can see, which is kind of, they call it truism, or in Arabic they call it al-riwa'iyya or al-riwaqiyya. Okay, it's like riwaqiyya. It's in a way like what you have in Arabic tradition, as-Sufiyya. Okay, it's like Stoicism in a way. Stoicism is riwaqiyya, Stoicism, okay, which is a system of thought and behavior originating in ancient China. So it's behavior, mainly behavior, okay? And of course, philosophy of it's complete in many dimensions: tradition, religion, humanity, okay, rationalism. Yeah, in a way, it's rationalistic religion. So it's religion based on the way you contemplate and the way you think, the way that makes you relax and more peaceful with others. So this is a way of governing, a way of, simply a way of life. That's Confucianism. And of course, spring and autumn was a period in history that correspond at that time to what the period of a very famous power that was in Eastern Zhou period called. And it's about spring and autumn annals. That's the chronicle, state of China at that time. Now, the philosophy of Confucius, as you can see, emphasizes personal and government morality. So it's morality in everything for people, for the government. It talks about correctness. It talks about justice, kindness. So serenity or peace. So it's serenity. It's like inner peace. Okay. So it's everything that deals with value and let's say moral values. And when they talk about religion, they discuss it from a spiritual and moral point of view. So it's not the idea of gods, it's the idea of spirituality and rationality, and how to govern and be more peaceful. So his followers also thought of, they were related to many schools during the 100 schools of thought, they call it. 100 schools of thought. So it's not only one, it's 100 school of thoughts where philosophers and schools at that time flourished. That was in the 6th century. And in the 230-21 BC, during spring and autumn period, that was what is called the warring states of ancient China. And then they were suppressed in certain era. And many legal forms of the dynasty of his dynasty appeared, and they were. I don't want to get into the details of dynasties. We wanted to get more into details of their philosophy, and what is more known is the New Confucianism, which is modern new Neo-Confucianism, which is a kind of liberal and liberated in many ways in way of thinking. So what they did is that they contemplated more on the Chinese classic texts they already had, and they studied or they tried to refer to the text they originated in the dynasty that was in 221, which is they had 4 books and 5 classics. So it's like a Bible to them, 4 books and 5 classics. And they were taken by the Neo-Confucian tradition, which is the new and liberated and, developed, let's say, Confucianism. And they were thinking of trying to classify what is called 5 classics, which is 4 books and 5 classics. So when we say 5 classics, we are referring to a major 4 books about authority, their authority in the world. And of course, they try to work on their teachings, spread them through all the world through what is called aphorism. Now, aphorism is a kind of memorable expression that reflects truth. So it's like when Aristotle Plato and Aristotle talked about justice and truth and reality and so on. So that was the way the term used in Confucius words. Aphorism, which is an expression used to reflect truth as a principle. And they tried to handle that tradition from one generation to another by, having certain principles and maxims and proverbs and sayings, as all other cultures do, of course, to reflect on their teachings. And they try to compile it in what is called the the analects, which is again an ancient Chinese book composed of large collection of sayings. So it's like aqwal or hadith, okay, written or said by Confucius. So that was the just Chinese philosopher, of course, trying to reflect on what is contemporary nowadays. And they tried to pass it all over. This is the way they write, of course, till they reach was to concentrate on the ideas like loyalty of families, being loyal to your family. So they are loyal to they think of everything as circles. The big circle is of the world, and then the smaller is that one of their country, for example, and then the smaller is that one is for their families, for example. So they have family loyalty, and that tradition is based on what is called the Ancestor Veneration, or the Chinese ancestor worship, as you can see here in this photo, where you can see Chinese patriarchal religion. So it's like patriarchal. It's they call it in Arabic al-mujtama' al-patriarchy. So it's let's say man-made. So it's like an aspect of Chinese tradition here and religion that revolves from one patriarch to another, and they celebrate ancestors and all deities in such in their ancestors. Also, I told you maybe last time about the golden rule. The golden rule, which is they used to believe in that men should do or should follow, which is the principle of treating others. That you should treat people as others expect you to. Or as you like to be treated, and so on. So let me here stop talking about Confucius and continue with the other philosopher, which is Descartes. Let's see, Descartes, this is a French. So he is the founder of modern age, and he is French, Rene Descartes. So he was good in two things, in metaphysics and in physics. He's known in mathematics also. Now you know that physics, metaphysics is, the other side of physics. So it's meta means beyond physics. So he tried to have some practical way of understanding methods and scientific methods. So his main motto was, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. أنا أفكر إذا أنا موجود. This is his saying, Descartes. So he was also skeptic in the way he tried to recognize the idea of existence. And so he thinks that one's existence is there in the mind. It is there in the mind. So it's if you think, you are there. If you don't, you are not there. So you do not exist. You cannot know if you are there unless you exist, unless you think. Okay, and you raise questions, and you are skeptic. And he believes in that as separate from the body. So he is talking about the metaphysical form or metaphysical fact here. So he is trying to introduce two ways. We have the empirical way, which is the scientific way, that's the physics, the physical one, okay? And we have the one that is beyond, which is spiritual, okay? And that is metaphysics. And so he was trying to, realize what is meant by scientific methodology. So scientific methodology, as we believe in nowadays, beginning was taken from his words, Descartes, in his what it told you, right now about meditation. When I told you this is a French here, meditation. Meditation in French means meditation. So he was thinking of meditation as a way to reach or to reach the answer and the reality and truth. So it's all in our thoughts. Okay, that's Rene or Descartes. Now let's see also about Descartes. More information about him. This is a portrait of him. You can see that he was educated in Collège Royal Henri le Grand, which is Henry the Great, okay, in French. Collège is college, Royal Henri le Grand, okay, which is a French military school. It belongs to a French military school and, offering education, regular education to all, preparatory, let's say, classes and students in universities also, preparing them for military academics. And he was, as you can see, raised in Kingdom of France, and he died later in Swedish Empire. And his era was in 17th century. And that was what is called the Age of Enlightenment. This is very important, the Age of Enlightenment. He's very lucky because at that age, it was intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated the world at that time in Europe. That was 17th and 18th century. So at that age, he was beginning to spread his ideas. And of course, he belonged to what we call as Western philosophy, which refers to Western world. And historically, we know that the philosophical thinking of Western culture was very important at that time. That was because of, reflecting on the beginning of ancient Greek philosophy and what we call as the pre-Socratics, ما قبل السقراطيين. So it's like a method before. And the word, philosophy was originated from the ancient Greek at that time. But you can also think of one of his main ideas, Descartes, is the idea of rationalism, which is epistemological view. So it is epistemology, the study of knowledge, and the reflection on knowledge, that is rationalism. So it's regarding or treating reason and mind, okay, as the main, let's say, source and power to test knowledge, whether it's right or wrong, true or right or wrong or false. So he viewed also any view to him appealing to reason is accepted, and any view appealing to knowledge is justified. So knowledge and justification is taken based on reason, according to him. And more rationalism is defined according to what he related later on the idea of methodology and the theory of methodology as a theory, okay, in treating or discovering the truth. Now, his way of thinking is called, he's called Descartes, okay, but his method is called Cartesian. So Cartesian is a reference to the word Descartes, okay. I'm taking here the second part of his name, Carte, okay, Descartes, in French, D-E-S, means belonging to. For example, if you say Fulan ibn Fulan, okay, so we say de, okay. It's a reference in family name in French. So Descartes is the Cartesian method here, Rene Descartes, and its subsequent, it is kind of, development that was in the 17th century as thinkers like François Poulain, de la Barre, you see, de, again, we have this part de, which is belonging to the family of, or tribe, or patriarch. And we have Nicolas, also Malebranche, and we have Daru Spinoza. Spinoza is another very famous name that we'll take later on, maybe if we have time to discuss. So he was the one to develop what is called the Cartesianism as a method. And then we have the Spinozism that reflects to or refers to Spinoza. Spinoza is another philosopher we'll talk about later. He is what we call as a philosopher who believed in God. He defined God as the singular self-subsistent, which is as a substance. So he called God as singular substance, okay, substance, as the only substance that we can have in the world. So what is meant by that? It's a kind of reflection on God, if the God is there or not. Okay, that's the idea that he tried to think about, and that was also reflected in Martin Luther and all his, teachings. Now Descartes and Spinoza, and there's another also very important philosopher who's called Leibniz. Okay, Leibniz. He was they were given at that time what is called the Age of Reason, because they reflect in anything and they refer to reason and mind in the in history. So that was their main contribution. So Descartes is known for what is a very, very famous book, which is called Meditations on First Philosophy, التأملات في الفلسفة الأولى. Okay, this is the Arabic translation of it, if you want to read it. Meditations on, First Philosophy. This is it. This is a book, okay, written by Descartes. And that is a book where he tries to discuss the existence of God and know the idea of immortality and eternity of the soul, and that is demonstrated philosophically in his treatise, and that was also published in Latin at that time in that year, and we have also a French translation of that, which is called Méditation Métaphysique. Okay, Méditation Métaphysique. This is the title in French. Now, as I told you, he tried to influence mathematics also. So he took the influence from mathematics and he tried to treat mathematics in a philosophic way, so that to reach logic, what is called logic. And he used the Cartesian coordinate system to understand, and that was named, of course, after his name. And he believed in what is called analytical geometry, which is coordinating geometry and Cartesian geometry to reach the understanding of the world and the whole world, and how is it composed and done through geometry. So, and you can see here, so he's a mathematician. He is a person who believed in metaphysics also, and the logic of the mind, and everything that's related to or to based on mathematics. I think this is difficult here to understand, because you need to know logic before talking about Descartes. But when you say the name Descartes, you always have to go back to rationality, to geometry, to algebra. So which is the bridge between algebra and geometry. That's the analysis he tried to understand. So it's kind of mathematics and theory and metaphysics, so that he can build on to reach what is called a calculus, and to make kind of analysis, mathematical analysis. This is the infinity sign, in a way, that he reached, the branch of mathematics dealing with limits and theories related to that. And he illustrated the major key figures of what is called scientific revolution. And scientific revolution, as you can see, it's the period where everything developed into theory, from theory to development of mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, all fields of science and chemistry, and they all together as transforming into the society of nature and the essence of nature. That's the scientific revolution. Okay. Now, we can see his, for example, visions, if you want, his visions. His main visions, according to him, were related, starting with what is called a kind of, geometry and thinking of analysis in a very, very analytical way. Using maybe different meditations to reach the essence of Cartesianism, okay, which is called, he tried to reach what is called the third meditation. And we have the first meditation that was on the idea of God and the existence of God, till he reached the meditation that deals with everything that relates to the self and inner thoughts. He reached what is called I think here. The two first principles were I think and I exist. Okay, so number one is I think, and number two is I exist. So what is number three? What do you think? Number three is I, therefore I exist. Okay, so it's the idea of here defining thought, which is cogito. So there is one thing that is called in Arabic cogito. Okay, so what is cogito? It's a word that reflects the idea of thinking and existing, which is what happens in me when I think that I exist. Okay, or if I exist, I think that I exist. This is cogito. Okay. Now, so it's reflection on what is called consciousness. So let's see what's cogito, which is there was an issue displaying this preview. Let's see the page that talks about that. This is it. So it's you can see it in Latin phrases because the word is taken from Latin derivation. Okay. I don't want you to be to go back to that word, very, very difficult to understand, but to sum it up, we can say it deals with the idea of consciousness, which is scientifically a simple way to understand, awareness, and that you externally exist. Okay, so it's how the mind, inner feeling reflect on your physical outside and external existence. Now, this is the main idea that was puzzling and very controversial to many philosophers. And he also was trying to reflect on thoughts and dreams, and what happens when we dream, for example, and the act of dreaming. And he thought that the act of dreaming itself provides us evidence that we have other senses, we have to distinguish between right and reality and illusion. And this is what actually the dream is, or the argument of dream is. Okay, and also he talked about perception, which is a kind of sensation or sensory information to reach reality based on the information that is given in the environment. And he defined a kind of method, a scientific method or mathematical method in logic, which is called deductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning is part of what is called deductive logic, which is taken from the word deduce, and which is the process of reasoning, العقلانية أو التفكير العقلاني, which is from one or more statements. You have certain premises, عندك مقدمات, and you reach from such premises into a certain conclusion, and that is a logical conclusion. تنتقل من المقدمات إلى النتائج. That is a logical conclusion بطريقة منطقية. Okay, that's so he believed in also dualism, which is the dualism of mind and body, العقل والجسم, and solving problems that sometimes the kind of complications that may happen because of the contradictions between the mind and the body, or the soul and the mind, and so on. So this is his work, which is L'Homme, okay, L'Homme de Rene, L'Homme al-Insan. L'Homme in French means man, okay, human being or man. So he tried to think of dualism here as the problem, solving the problem between mind and body, and thinking of the mental phenomena and the other, or what is called non-physical phenomena, which is the mind, and then reflecting on what happens in the body, which is الدماغ, العقل والدماغ, okay, and the soul, الروح. So that was his idea on dualism, reflecting on what happens in man, and of course going back to two things, to theology, which is thinking of nature from a divine perspective. So it's the study of religions in a way, and religious beliefs, let's say, or belief, and he tried to understand that through what is called religious epistemology, معرفة دينية, okay? And then also he used physics, because also, as I told you, that he was a mathematician and physician, so he also tried to understand physics through nature and science and matters of energy and, fundamental disciplines in science or scientific disciplines and so on in the universe, to understand them. And another very important book of him is what is called Principia Philosophia. Okay, this is not French, this is a Latin translation. So it's a book that talks about what is called synthesis. Synthesis, it's like we have thesis, okay, and antithesis, and then synthesis. So it's like, I don't know what it's called in Arabic. It's like القضية وعكسها أو ضدها, and then when you combine them, you reflect and you reach what is called a synthesis, which is the join. It's gathering or joining two contradictions together, so that dialectically you will end into an answer or solution. And he raised that in what is called discourse on method. Discourse on method and meditations on first philosophy. And that is, as I said, that was written in Latin and published by a very famous, let's say, publisher, which is Elizabeth of Bohemia. And that was very, very important, the Principia Philosophia, a very, very important book, which is Principle of Philosophy. He said how we can clearly perceive substance apart from the mode that we can refer to if you see the other form of it, which is the spiritual form and intellectual abstraction, التفكير المجرد. Okay, so to perceive a mode apart from its substance is very, very difficult. For example, if I say, can you imagine having, let's say, a table without, in the beginning, knowing what is a table? For example, trying to teach a little kid the meaning of a table without letting that kid see what is a real table in actual life, you see? So that's intellectual abstraction, تفكير مجرد, and it's very difficult. This is what Descartes raised in dualism when thinking about mind and body. Also, he talked about causal adequacy principle, which is, causal, السبب العلية, which is the CAP, he called it the CAP. How much principle is adequate to cause, which is reality, principle of reality, which is a claim that Rene Descartes thought that you cannot have any answer unless you think of the causes. So what makes it real, or the reality, is reflected through the causes. So that's the major principle. And also he thought of what is called of the existence of God, and he tried to define that through the words nothing comes from nothing. Okay, so يعني العدم nothing العدمية, فكرة العدمية. Okay, nothing comes from nothing, which is a philosophical dictum that was argued before, and it associates the ancient Greek cosmology. And they were trying in Greek cosmology, philosophy, they were trying to understand the world and how it became. And they said that nothing comes from nothing. There should be a reason, and that was the way that was presented in other works of Homer. I'm sure you studied that in Homerus. And he tried also to virtually understand the internal system, how it was working, from this very important classic metaphysics of Plato and Aristotle. Okay, so to go back to his dualism, and we said psychology and physiology. Also, we want to talk about his moral philosophy. His moral philosophy, as you can see, it's reflecting on ethics, on free will. Now Descartes, ethic, or what is moral philosophy, which is a branch of philosophy that involves systemizing the defense of values over the behavior, so that the concept of right and wrong is so clear to people and to minds of people, and to become to know what is values, what is meant by a good, a right behavior or wrong behavior, and that was called as a branch of philosophy. It was called axiology. We have also anything related to aesthetics. He tried to understand ethics with aesthetics, which is not only thinking of morality, thinking of beauty. What is beauty, and what is happiness? Such questions were raised by him. And he also thought of the idea of defending free will. as I told you, because of his theory of mind and body dualism. So he thought that free will, which is the ability to choose between different possible courses of action, is very important, and that is what makes man man, what makes man human, which is the free will. Okay, and that cannot be without the moral excellence of virtues, without having the traits and the qualities of morality in each man, and to have the foundation principle of good moral being, how to exercise morality, and how to have the characteristics and values of moral standards and moral greatness, even he called it. Of course, he believed in making good choices and to be able to choose between, different models, different definitions of, to reach your destination, to be able to choose your destination. That is very humanistic. And he was thinking of it till he was talking also concerning other abstract ideas, like, for example, the idea of blessedness. So in religion, we know what is blessing, which is, to be in infusion with holiness, or with God, or with anything divine, or the spiritual redemption of God, and so on. But what about if you don't believe? What about other pleasures? What about the mental experiences that you may face? The consciousness. What about other species in the world, for example, animals or any other creatures? How can we define happiness and entertainment and ecstasy and so on? So they were the major questions that were raised by Rene Descartes. Of course, you can see that philosophy is concerned more about questions, raising questions, more than answering them. So they try, of course, each philosopher to raise a question and have a certain school or way of thinking to understand what is meant by that. And that is the provisional way of thinking of it. Now he also discussed religion, as I told you, and thinking of it from the point of view of epistemology, which is again a branch of philosophy that deals with knowledge, as I told you, and it reflects on what is rational and what is not rational, what is logical and what is not, and so on. And here he also regarded, Pascal is another philosopher who was mathematician at that time and inventor. He also regarded Descartes' rationality and, as one of the major important, successes in philosophy. And he said, I cannot forgive Descartes because he was the one to raise the point that he was thinking of the idea of God not in a logical way, that he was rejecting him. Okay, so that was the external world of skepticism that he thought of. And philosophic skepticism, which is مبدأ الشك الفلسفي, it is, kind of philosophy or branch of philosophy that you try to question everything, the possibility of knowledge, the idea of certainty. For example, they raise questions like, is it certain that we are living now in the world, or is it only a dream, for example, and so on. And what makes you think that the dream is not the right thing and now we are dreaming? So it's quite the opposite. So, and we have certain even such discussion was raised in many films, Shabab. I don't know if you followed. We'll discuss it later. One of the films that was called Inception. It was about this idea, the skepticism about the world, if you are really living it or it's only a dream. And many other ideas came to mind reflecting on this. Of course, he discussed here everything, but let's see, to end with this, let's see his writings. And I discussed many of his writings. You can see, for example, we have here his major philosophical writings or works that all deal with Cartesianism. And the first principle, and we have the third meditation, which is the cogito, which is how he defined thoughts and consciousness, and the idea of deduction, and l'homme, al-insan, okay, and his the idea of meditation on the first philosophy, okay. These here were the main and major skeptical, let's say, philosophy, mainly based on moral philosophy. By this, we'll stop here. We'll end. We discussed today a little brief about Confucius and Descartes, and maybe next time we'll continue with the last three or two other philosophers. So we reach here, and let me make a stop in and listen to your questions, please.